Man, yeah, woo! The BMW X5M Competition gets a refresh for the 2024 model year, and it gets some really big changes both on the outside, the inside, as well as under the hood. And in this video, I'll cover all of those changes, as well as going over the exterior, the interior, taking it for a drive and seeing what it's like to drive, as well as talking about the fuel economy you can expect, the pricing, and how it compares to the competition. But as far as the exterior styling, well, it's of course been sharpened up alongside all the other X5s here for 2024, and it's a really nice look. You have these headlights in particular, which are 1.5 inches narrower than before, and have the new elements in them that look really cool, very high tech, and just an awesome look. You also have the bolder black accents here and the bolder grille, which now can be illuminated, and just all the cooling for the X5M in particular makes it very clear this car is not messing around. And speaking of not messing around, the X5M is now only available in a competition version. There is no regular X5M anymore, so you're going for the full performance, the full aggression here with a competition. That's the only way these come now, which is an interesting choice, and we'll talk more about that once we're out on the road. But otherwise, this one with this matte gray paint looks awesome. You also have these massive wheels here with the huge brakes behind them, and really a cool look, and all the black accents here on the sides, the usual M mirrors. And then going out to the back, I love those new taillights. Again, lots of complexity, very high tech and cool looking. You also have massive exhaust tips. They're 4 inches in diameter for each of them. And it makes a statement alongside a big rear wing you have, and just the bold surfacing of that tailgate there and the badging and all that. It just looks really cool and really stands out, again, especially in this matte paint. The interior of the X5M Competition feels just as luxurious as you'd want for a $140,000 SUV like this one is as tested. And so this one also has the executive package, which gives you all kinds of other niceties like these massaging seats, the heated and cooled cup holders, and a bunch of other nice touches. But anyway, first thing, sitting down in these seats, I really love these seats. They have, you know, the very cool sculpting to them. I love the little bit of a honeycomb look to the perforations and the embossing there. And so much adjustability, of course. You have adjustable bolstering, adjustable lumbar. You can really adjust the seat to be pretty much your perfect position, and they feel really, really good. I really love these seats, and you can get them in so many different colors too. The BMW is so good about offering more interior colors than I'd say most companies out there, and I'm really happy. This one, having this red, is a really nice choice. Moving on to the steering wheel here, that is still mostly the same as before, but you do have these new carbon fiber paddle shifters here on the back of the wheel that look really cool, feel good, and I love the use of color as well for not only the paddle shifters but also the M1 and M2 buttons, which are fun little buttons. Remind me of the nitrous buttons from back in the day for anyone who's grew up in the tuner years. But really great wheel. I love the 993 grip. The 10 and 2 notch is definitely a little bit overboard. I can barely get my hands around them, but it's a very fun wheel. The gauges here, so that's one of the new things here for 2024, is you get this new curved display, which is beautiful, and it has a 12.3 inch digital gauge cluster and a 14.9 inch infotainment display. And first off, for the gauges, they are so incredibly high resolution. It's a glossy, nice display here. And thankfully, it doesn't have too many reflections so far, which I appreciate, even though there's no hood over this gauge cluster. But, it's customizable, and you're familiar with this if you've seen any of their BMWs, where you have the little thing in the middle there you can scroll through various different functions. Just a nice, clear display of the information in a very futuristic way, in my opinion. They also have a head-up display here. Coming over to the middle of the dashboard here, again, that touchscreen is really beautiful, and what I love about it is just how fast and responsive it is. Even the second you hop in this vehicle, there's no waiting time. It's instantly ready to go really quick, and I love the amount of customization you have in this. Like, even for certain buttons, you can have it so that a screen menu pops up if you want when you press that button, or not pop up. You can have that choice, so you can have it annoy you more or less depending on your preferences. And I also love the search function, so even though like the basic menu thing here for all the different icons can be a little overwhelming, you can just type in briefly what you're looking for, and it'll pull it right up and makes that very easy to access whatever it is you're looking to access. Of course, it has gesture controls, voice controls, all those types of things as well if you want to be a little bit more advanced. But even just the basic touch stuff all works well. The only thing that's a bit odd is the climate control. Now, thankfully, your climate control settings here are always at the bottom of the screen, even if you're running CarPlay, which this does have wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto. But it's just interesting because whenever you pull up the climate, there's auto, but then you still have to control the fan speed yourself as far as how aggressive you want it to come on. And I mean, it's nice to have that customization, but it just feels like it's not truly doing automatic climate control for you. Not a big deal. I will continue to try that out as I have this vehicle for a whole week and see, if anything annoys me over the course of a week. But first impression, it's, not too bad. And then otherwise, though, I mean, CarPlay always, connects nice and quickly. It's a nice large display for that CarPlay. Getting into your vehicle settings, all that is nice and easy to do. And I think it's actually nice and simplified. I know there's already like an 8.5 version of the software that's coming out, but I don't really have any complaints so far with this system in this iDrive 8 configuration. This Bowers & Wilkins stereo, which is an option, is beautiful though, with these metal speaker grills that are illuminated, and it's a fantastic 20 speaker, 1500 watt surround sound stereo. Moving on beyond the display here, we have very thin air vents. It's another thing they changed here for 2024. Thankfully, the ones on the sides by the door are nice and large, but this one in the middle is pretty thin. Again, we will see how it keeps up with cooling needs here in the summer as I have this vehicle for a week, but it's a cool, low profile look. I can appreciate the aesthetics of it. We'll see how well it works in function. But otherwise, just a typical little volume knob here, lower down, and a few other shortcut buttons. And then you have your two cup holders, which again are heated and cooled, which is a cool touch. You have a wireless charging pad with a nice little nub here and a USB-A jack as well. But hopefully it'll actually do some good wireless charging since it actually holds your phone in place a bit. And you have your usual assortment of BMW buttons down here by the shifter, as well as your controller wheel still if you don't want to get fingerprints on this nice big display. Another thing I'm appreciating in this area is that you have padding by your knees on all of it. So regardless of where your knee hits, you should have padding, which you'd be amazed how many other vehicles in these kinds of price ranges have hard plastic or metal here for your knees. I love that this is all nice and padded, but you still have the nice attractive metal and carbon fiber everywhere else. You also have nice large pockets in the doors. They're really massive bins, especially the bottle holder part there. And then also in the middle here, you have this split opening center armrest, which has a decent amount of space, as well as your USB-C jack there. Another thing that also it really makes an impression is the ambient lighting, which has been updated here for 2024 and gives you some extra lighting there across the middle. But the thing that I really love is this Sky Lounge panoramic roof with all these little dots it has. It's a really cool look even in the daytime, but at nighttime when that's lit up, it is so cool and something that I've never seen in other vehicles, and it's just gonna give you a wow factor at night in this vehicle that no other vehicles really do. But going on to the back seat here in the X5M, it's a decent amount of space from a legroom standpoint. Certainly not the most spacious thing out there, but I'd say compared to the other main competitors this is competing against, it's gonna be right in line with the rest. And I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself. I have a couple inches of legroom, a couple inches of headroom there, a comfortable back seat. They're heated seats back there. I'd like to see cooled seats, but nice to have the heat at least. They have their own climate controls and power outlets and all that. It's also cool that you have a little tablet mount and another USB-C jack there built right into the top of the seat back, which is a nice handy touch. There's also a fold down center armrest with cup holders and a bin, and their own pockets on the doors as well. And overall should be a totally fine back seat. The trunk space here in the X5M is great. I still love how they've continued to go on with the split folding tailgate there, where you have the bottom part drop down and the top part lift up. I've always appreciated that about the X5s. And it's nice you have that, and a nice wide space, of course, nice and long. That hasn't changed here for 2024, but still a good amount of space. Beneath the floor there, you will see a spare tire, which is also nice. That's something that's getting more and more rare these days, so I love to see that. And overall, yeah, just a really nice cargo area as well. But let's start up and go for a drive. The X5M has BMW's new key, which I really love. It's very cool, again, with the different shapes here on it, and it's a very glossy kind of feel to it, and just a really cool key. Has a nice weight too, makes it feel more expensive too. But of course it is keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. Alright, so setting off here in the X5M Competition. So the first things you notice about this vehicle, I think the first thing I'm noticing is the nice little rumble from this exhaust, this active exhaust, which has a button here. You can turn it off or on depending on what you want, but when it's on, it's subtle, but it's there, and it's very nice sounding. The other thing you'll notice, though, it might not be so pleasant, is this suspension, which is a little bit on the stiff side. You do feel all the bumps, and unfortunately there's no way to get a softer suspension, because again, you have to get this competition version, which is more hardcore, and I feel like that might not be everyone's taste, and I'll talk more about this a little bit later on, but you know, going for competition only for 2024 here, you know, is a choice, and I think that will alienate a few people who just want a ton of power and still want, you know, super comfortable ride qualities. I mean, this isn't beating me up. It's not race car stiff or anything, at least so far. I will continue to test that throughout the course of the week here, but you know, it's just pronounced for sure. Other things though, brakes feel nice and grabby, of course, massive brakes on this thing, and the throttle response is also nice and responsive. It stood out to me, even in normal, you know, comfort mode here, how much, you know, just a little movement of the gas pedal really makes this thing want to go. You can tell the way they tuned it was that this thing wants to take off on you. And now it's not, you know, hard to control or anything, but it just gives you this very eager feel that is very fun and just reminds you that you have a lot of power under your foot there that is ready to go at a moment's notice. Other things though, it's nice and quiet too. You know, very little road noise so far. Tire noise is actually pretty decent considering how massive these tires are. We'll again test that out more here a little bit later, but visibility is also really good here in any X5. You know, you have a great large windshield. The A-pillar is a little thick, but it's honestly out of the way enough that it hasn't gotten in my way so far yet. The out of the back, of course, is good in typical SUV fashion. The transmission also is pretty nice with the way it shifts. It's been really nice and smooth so far, and hasn't been, you know, overboard or anything. But I'm gonna go ahead and put it up into the M2 mode, which is putting basically everything into its most aggressive setting, and we're going to turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. And here we go. And it jumped. Oh man, there's like this almost cinematic thump that happens on upshift. Man, and even on braking there, it squirms a little bit whenever you got the wheel turn, but man, it sounds good and it feels great. So we have this 4.4 liter twin turbo V8 engine. It's the S68 motor. I love, you can hear those crackles and pops on the overrun there, but it's a really strong motor. It does 617 horsepower, 553 pound-feet of torque, which is the same peak horsepower as before, but they did improve the power here in this because it now has a 48-volt mount hybrid system in this that gives you 12 extra horsepower and about 140 odd pound-feet of torque, which basically helps you off the line and in the mid-range. It doesn't give you any extra peak power, but you know, it's going to help us to feel punchier, and that's in combination with this retuned ZF 8-speed automatic transmission as well, which now has a shorter ratio for the first 3 gears to rip your head off even more, but then for the upper gears you have better efficiency now. So again, they're maximizing efficiency while also improving the fun factor, which is great to see that you can do both. It doesn't have to be in everything or nothing, you know, one or the other choice. You can have the best of both worlds. I love how much this thing moves around. I was expecting it to feel, I think, a little less theatrical and dramatic than it does. It really, I mean, I'm impressed. The suspension lets you have as much, you know, squat and dive as you have. It makes this feel active and just like, you know, you're being part of the process and it's not just some simulation or something. But even, you know, this road we're on here usually generates a little more road noise, and you don't really hear much. So really well done as far as the refinement from a luxury standpoint goes as well. But coming up some corners here that I always take, and let's see how the X5M Competition handles. So we have the suspension in its stiffest setting here and chucking it in. I really appreciate that the steering is actually pretty light, relatively speaking, for this, you know, most aggressive setting, and it means that this vehicle feels very eager to dive in and just feels like it's just, you know, wanting to do whatever you ask of it. Now, there is a little, I'll say that, you know, there is some help there for sure with diving in, but this is still a pretty heavy vehicle. I think it's weighing about 5,400 pounds, so you are dealing with physics still. It's not like it's going to, you know, break those laws, but it is really good with the handling, and I am very impressed. I mean, you are sitting up higher in this too, so that kind of discourages you maybe a little bit until you learn it a little more, but I do like how, you know, the steering isn't overboard here, and yeah. And this transmission's doing a good job of figuring out what I want. And I mean, there's just so much power too that there's never going to be any time where this thing feels like it's taken off guard or anything. It is So good feeling. Other things for this engine though too is that they improved a bunch of the internals and changed some stuff. Like there's different intake routing now than before. The exhaust manifold is different, and there's also like a different crankshaft drive and a few other minor little things that they did to tweak this engine. So there are some actual improvements here. It's not just carryover as far as the powertrain goes. In addition to, again, the great improvement with the gearing here, it just means this thing is very lively, more lively than before. I'm assuming. I have not had the privilege of reviewing the pre-refresh version of the X5M, or any X5M for that matter, in the past, although I've experienced these before in the older generations. But but yeah, I mean, it's nice and good, even with, you know, giving me a downshift there right as soon as I lean onto the gas. And you know, it's just doing a very good job. There's some other vehicles that, you know, still will try and hypermile a little bit, even in their sportiest settings, or they're a little too overboard. This is really like a sweet spot, I think, of you just doing what you want it to do, nothing more, nothing less. And I'm going to quickly try and do a little brake torque launch here. Oh, man, yeah, woo! Ooh, this thing is fast. Man. By the way, 0 to 60 time officially is claimed by BMW at 3.7 seconds. I think Motor Trend got 3.4. BMW is always very conservative. I commend them for being conservative with their claims, but you know, it's faster than the 3.7 second time, I think, and totally believe that 3.4 number. Let's try out some manual shifts here and see how that does. Go down here, see how short first is. All right, so let me do first here, and here we go. The way this thing jumps! I mean, it's really quick. Really quick for the downshifts too. Yeah, it all feels so good. Manual shifting is more than enough speed, I think. And yeah, I mean, the ZF8 speed has always been fantastic transmission, arguably probably the best torque converter automatic out there anyway. And you can also change the shift speed, which is something most other vehicles don't let you do, but with this there's 3 different levels, so you can have that as aggressive or as casual as you want. But oh yeah, this would be an amazing daily driver. And honestly, I do have to commend them for this Sport Plus suspension setting even. I mean, these roads here in southwestern Pennsylvania are not by any means glass smooth, and yet I don't feel like this is overly harsh. I've seen other reviews complain about this being too stiff for the ride. I beg to differ. Even in Sport Plus mode here, I don't think it's really that bad, honestly. Now, it might not be as smooth as some competitors. I think the RS Q8 does have a smoother ride. So if you want the most smooth ride possible, sure, I could see maybe going for one of the other competitors. But, you know, if you love the X5M, what it offers, you know, I think that this isn't going to be like some hardship driving around and this is a daily driver. It's going to be totally fine from a ride quality standpoint, and you'll be too focused on laughing your head off every time you stomp on it and road through these gears, or just let the vehicle do its own thing, because I mean, it is so good just in the automatic mode too. I'm so impressed with that. Other things here about the X5M. So they also revised the traction control and stability control systems. They're quicker reacting now for 2024. And so that means the all-wheel drive system is quicker to react. The rear diff is quicker to react as well. They both work in tandem all together and everything to give you the best traction deployment possible. And got a nice tight corner here. Yeah, it's really good. And also with this active suspension you have here at the adaptive dampers, you also do get 4-wheel steer, which is great because that allows you to have, you know, smaller turning radius even in tight parking spots, which is always appreciated. But also, you know, whenever you're out on a back road here, it's going to just shrink the vehicle around you and make it feel a lot more dynamic. And some more corners here. That's my camera gear goes rolling all over the place. Man, yeah, this thing is just, and it also still accelerates with such large strides with this massive amount of power, yet still having, you know, the short gearing that I love. And last corner here, just to try and push it. Yeah, it's really very neutral and just feels, whew, it's a wild ride. It feels fantastic. And so yeah, I mean, I really don't have anything to complain about. If you're getting something that's a performance SUV like this, they're all going to be heavy. They're all going to be, you know, high off the ground. So you have that factor that's limiting you in anything in this segment. But as long as you're okay with that, I mean, nothing else detracts from the performance focus of this vehicle. And with the amount of weight it's working with, by the way, I mean, it's still very impressive what this thing's able to do. It's also partially thanks to these massive tires, 295 wide in the front, 315s in the rear. It sounds so good. And also, the top speed, by the way, is 155 miles per hour usually, but if you get the $2,500 M driver's package, then it gets raised to 177 miles per hour. The M driver's package, though, consists of just that higher top speed and a paid-for course at the M driving school, which is good because it, gives you that training. If it's going to give you those extra capabilities of the higher top speed, having that extra training, I think, is a very responsible thing to bundle together. Another thing is, whenever you want to slow all this power down, you have these massive brakes. There's 6 piston calipers in the front. They're 15.6-inch rotors. In the back, you have 15-inch rotors. Surprisingly, though, only 1 piston caliper is there in the rear. Typically, you see at least 2 on anything that has, track aspirations. Again, I'm sure from what I've seen on track, these things are phenomenal, and there is no brake fade, but just kind of surprising to see that spec there to have 1 piston in the rear. But otherwise, yeah, so we'll go ahead and put it into the M1 mode, which is my other driving mode, which has the engine in its Sport Plus setting, but then has everything else basically in its comfort mode. So if you want to just have the nice smooth ride, but still have that very responsive engine, the louder note, you can have that here as well. And I have like this transmission in its medium setting for shifts. By the way, in addition to just having the shorter ratios, they also said that the shifts happen sharper than before, so it gives you that extra, engagement that you're looking for once again. So it seems like for 2024, they took what was already, I'm sure, a very fun vehicle and then just made it even more exciting with the shorter gearing, even more efficient with the 48-volt thing, which also gives you extra power, and just basically improved everything here in this vehicle. And I am just so impressed with the way this thing drives on a back road, in a daily driver kind of situation. But let's hit the highway and see how it does out there. And now out on the highway here in the X5M Competition, it's a really nice cruiser. I'm really happy that, yes, you feel the little grooves in the road a little bit, but again, it's not overboard. I'd have no problems going on a road trip in this vehicle. Sign me up for that. But the one thing that is interesting to note, though, about these out on the highway here is that you don't have quite as much of the driver assistance tech as standard that you get in basically anything else out there. There's no adaptive cruise control in this vehicle because it doesn't have a $1,700 driver assistance package to give you adaptive cruise, which also gives you lane keeping assist. And I mean, if you're someone who doesn't care about that, I guess it's nice to not have the extra tech if it's something that you're not excited about. But you still have automatic emergency braking, still has blind spot monitoring, lane departure alert. All those types of things are standard, thankfully, so you have some of that basic stuff covered. But it just seems insane, especially on a vehicle that's this expensive. It starts at $123,000. To not throw in adaptive cruise control, like, I'm sorry, but a Toyota Corolla gives you adaptive cruise control as standard. So, I don't know, to me that's something, the German manufacturers for a long time have been nickel and diming everyone on every little option, and it's really great if you want to do a custom build and you can exclude things that other companies don't let you exclude. That's great. But these days, everyone just kind of expects this stuff, and you can always turn it off or not use it if you don't want it. So the fact that this doesn't have that just seems, like an unnecessary thing and just a little cheap on BMW's end, honestly. But as far as the other tech that it has a lot of really cool stuff, including some stuff that I've never seen before that's really brilliant in my opinion. So it does have like active park assistant as standard, which will allow you to do low speed stuff. You can connect it to your app on your phone and actually pull in and out of spots when you're not in the vehicle if you'd like. But one really cool thing, in addition to like the 360 cameras and all the other stuff, is that this also has this maneuver assist function where you can record a maneuver and it can then execute that maneuver and repeat it and do it in reverse or whatever. And it's really handy if you live in an area where you have a complex driveway situation, and if the car can do that maneuver either with you in the vehicle or autonomously out with you outside of the vehicle, and you have a crazy tight driveway, and then you want to just have the car meet you at the front door, you can program this to do that. I think it's several hundred meters, and you have, I think, 10 different routes that you can program it to do. And again, I'm sure there's a very small use case of people that actually would find that handy, but for the few that do, I mean, to not have to stress over a tight parking situation every day, is really cool. And again, something I haven't seen from any company outside of BMW. And I think it's a brilliant idea. And so just cool little things. I think BMW does a better job than others sometimes with allowing more customization and more ways to make the car perfectly tailored for exactly what you want and need from it. And I really like that. I think it's really cool, and I think it really adds the ownership experience and allows it to feel more like your car and customized for what you need and want and fit your life better. So yeah, overall, really, good to have that. Again, just add that better standard safety stuff, and I think, this thing would be top notch as far as the safety tech goes. But anyway, thanks to BMW, I will have this vehicle for an entire week, so I'm going to drive around all over the place. Then I'll come back and give you guys my final real-world fuel economy, which should be entertaining, as well as my thoughts on the pricing, how it compares to the competition, and anything else I noticed here during my week of driving it. Alright, so I've been driving the X5M Competition for a week now, and I really loved my time in this vehicle. I actually was able to do more driving in this than I typically do in a week of driving as well, putting almost 200 miles here on the X5M. And it's just a fantastic vehicle to live with as far as either being a family vehicle, doing longer highway drives. I did a few of those here, and just in general, it's just really nice to live with. Now, I will talk more about how it compares to the competition in a minute here, but the one other observation that I had about this vehicle during my week here is that I really don't like that there's no proximity sensors on the rear door handles. That seems like a weird thing to exclude for any X5, to be honest, and especially this, fully loaded X5M Competition. Just a weird exclusion. There's cars under $50,000 that have rear proximities on the rear doors there. So I don't know why they've excluded that, but it's just annoying at this price point to have to, anytime I want to go into the back seat to, put my daughter into her car seat, I got to grab the passenger's front door handle, unlock it, and then go grab the others. It's a minor first world thing, but whenever you're paying this kind of money, those are the types of things that are probably a little less acceptable than they are at a lower price point. But that's my only gripe. Otherwise, again, I just love the week with this. Now, as far as my fuel economy goes, I was actually pleasantly surprised. I thought it was going to be a lot worse because before I did a longer highway drive, and that certainly brought the average up, I was seeing like 11 mpg. But over my 200 miles of driving here now, I've been getting 14.8 mpg, which still isn't anything that we should applaud, honestly. Very low fuel economy still, but that does overperform the EPA estimates. These are only rated at 13 mpg in the city, 18 on the highway, and 15 combined. And I have to say that I did less than 50% highway driving, so I was expecting to get closer to the city rating and not hit that combined figure, which I'm basically hitting here. So maybe there's a slight chance these will actually be a little more efficient than the EPA estimates suggest. But again, we're still talking about 15 mpg, not great. But for this kind of performance and luxury and stuff, again, you're paying this kind of money. Fuel prices shouldn't be too much of an issue for you, and so just wanted to say that's what I'm getting is 15. Now, the last thing to mention though is the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So these start just over $123,000, and this one, as tested, is $140,045. So 140 exactly, basically, and at that price point, it is almost identically priced to a lot of the others out there, primarily the Audi RS Q8 and the Mercedes GLE 63S. Both of those are priced basically right at 140 grand, comparably equipped, or, give or take a couple $1,000, but basically the same price. And I didn't have any experience with the GLE 63S, so I can't weigh in on that one. But I did spend last year a week with the RS Q8, and I do have, a lot of thoughts on how this compares to that. Now, it's going to come down to what you prefer and what you're going for. So if you're going for something with just a bunch of power and you want the most luxurious thing possible, I think the Audi does that better. The Q8 is just based on the same platform as like the Bentley Bentayga, the Lamborghini Urus, so it's a higher platform in my mind, and you have things like double pane glass that you don't get here in this, and it's just the focus is on a smoother ride in those. The seats are less aggressive, and the handling isn't as good as this, I would say. It's close, but it's not as good as this. So it's really going to come down to, do you want something that's more hardcore with the, more aggressive seats, the more aggressive ride? If you want something that's more harder edged, this is going to be great, and I think certainly is better than the RS Q8 if that's your goal. If your goal, though, is just a bunch of power and a bunch of luxury, to me, I would rather have the Audi, because, again, the ride in this has been totally fine. Again, over 200 miles, I mean, no one in the family complained. I was hauling friends around as well. None of them complained about the ride. Not a single complaint about the ride. So all the reports about the ride being too stiff, I think, are overblown. Ride is fine, but it's just, it isn't quite as luxurious as the RS Q8 in my mind. So that's really the main differentiators there, is just those extra little touches. You know, it's quieter in the RS Q8, I think. You know, it's just going to come down to, again, your personal preference. The RS Q8 also has the older tech, which some people might prefer, but you know, if you want the most highest tech thing, this certainly has that. And this also has a couple of nice touches, like you have the illuminated moonroof there, which is a really cool touch. There are some nice little things over the RS Q8, but you know, the core stuff, the ride, the quietness, you know, the lack of aggression compared to this, I think is, you know, why the Audi is the slightly easier one to live with. But I think that this is still a ton of fun, and yeah, you can't really go wrong with either choice. I think it's the bottom line here. It just comes down to your personal preference. But even if you want something that's super luxurious, I think you can live with this just fine. It's still very luxurious, very, very nice. And the only last thing I will say about the value thing is, if you are someone who, you know, maybe is a little more price sensitive, wants, you know, a little bit of a better value, I just have to say that I think the strongest competitor to this is BMW's own X5M 60i, which that thing is $30,000 less than this and has the same torque figure as this actually as well. It's just that you lose out on some horsepower there. It's a good chunk of horsepower. That's, you know, in the mid 500s versus this being, you know, 617. And the extra horsepower is certainly appreciated in this, but you know, the same torque in a similar, you know, very quick SUV, all the same luxury, the same interior, the same looks, you know, outside of, you know, the slightly wider, you know, fenders, and the extra little things on the M are, you know, noticeable. But if you just want a bunch of power in an X5 that's just as luxurious as this, I'd personally, for my own money, I'd probably be, you know, just as happy with an X5 M60i, save 30 grand, and so that's the way to go if you do want a deal. I mean, it's still a six-figure SUV, you know, loaded up the same way this one is, but, you know, a better deal in that regard if that's something that, you know, you're looking at. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the X5M Competition. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to BMW for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. Thank you all very much for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe to keep these videos coming, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.